Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's AlexanderHilly123 here, and it's time for a new video. It's actually time for a new series of videos today on the channel. Down the years on this channel, I've made videos about football, video games mainly, silly vlogs here and there as well, a few reviews and whatnot. But my other main passion in life is music, and just over 3 years ago, I made a top 10 albums of the 90's list. I made that in the summer of 2011, just over 3 years ago now, and I enjoyed doing it. And as such, I thought I would expand on that and do a top 50 albums of the 1990's list. The 90's for me, my favourite decade of music ever, to be perfectly honest with you. Like a lot of 70's music, progressive rock, classic rock, bit of folk here and there. I know a bit of 60's music, but it's not like I know loads. The obviously bands and artists that you'll probably know the names of, but the 90's, there's grunge, there's Britpop, there's trip hop, there's rap, there's metal, there's just all sorts of stuff that I love from the 1990's, and I just thought I'll have fun making a top 50 list of the 1990's, and this has been in the pipeline for a few months, to be perfectly honest with you. I've been chopping and changing the list up until a week ago, where I just decided, right, I'm keeping it as is now, and I'm going to upload them. Basically 5 albums at a time, so 50 to 46, 45 to 41, 40 to 36, if that's right. I don't know, but I think my maths aren't great, but I think there should be, with 5 videos a time, 10 videos in total. I'm going to be doing 2 at a time, so 5 in this video, 5 in the next video, and then I'll leave it a week, do 2 more videos in succession then and there. But yeah, it's going to be a contentious list. There are albums I love which you'd find on Pitchfork Medias, and lots of hipsters top the lists of all time. There are guilty pleasures there. There are albums that are heavily loved and hated, and a few strange ones and whatnot, a few peculiar decisions, a few amazing albums that are near the top 50 where they've been near top 10 of other people's, but it's my personal subjective list, ladies and gentlemen. The only limitation I have put on the list is that the same band or artist cannot be on it more than once. So if you see a band in the number 45, rest assured they will not be anywhere else on the list. Of course, if a member of that band has released a solo album, then yes, he can be on that list. He or she can be on that list. But anyway, let's start with number 50. I'm not going to introduce these albums before I say them. I'm just going to say them and then talk about them. So no introductions, or no delayed introductions. I'm just going to get straight in there. It is In Utero, the third and final album by the American grunge band Nirvana. Yes, I have got Wikipedia up here on my laptop to help me. Now, this album, just yesterday actually, turned 21 years of age, and I guess a lot of people would say that Nevermind is Nirvana's best album. Some people would even say Bleach is, and Incesticide, I think one of those was an EP or like a best of compilation with all rare tracks, something like that. But I like this album the best from Nirvana. Some people think that they reinvented the wheel and they're one of the best bands ever. And some people go over the top with the love of them, but maybe so, but they were still a very good band, and I think had Kurt Cobain lived, I think the best was still to come. I think he was interested in going down a more singer-songwriter route. I think you can see that with the cover of The Man Who Sold the World by David Bowie. That is a great cover, probably one of my favourite covers of all time. One of my favourite pieces of music all time. It's just absolutely wonderful. But Kurt Cobain was always worried about making music that was too mainstream, and yet Nevermind was the biggest album in the world. For me, I was 2 years old when Nirvana released Nevermind, so obviously I wasn't really around to witness it, but I can't understand how an album could become that big. But these were times when being outside the box was a good thing. In today's music era, there's still great hard rock, electronic, trip hop, rap, all sorts of good shit, but in the mainstream, anything that's a little bit aggressive is just not going to be heard. You know, there's a new band called Royal Blood who are very good indeed. They're only two young lads, just a drummer and a guy with a guitar. And if they added two more members to that unit, bloody hell, they could become an absolutely fantastic band. But for some reason, they've gotten a lot of publicity. I've listened to their album. I think it's a little bit formulaic. It's all pretty much the same, but what they do is very good, and if they can build on that in the future, that'll be fantastic. But yeah, back to my point, I just can't understand how this kind of music made the mainstream. You know, people act as if bands like Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, Smashing Pumpkins, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Melvins, these kind of grunge bands, even though they were all different in their own way and all fantastic in their own way, and you will most certainly see some of those bands in this list. People act as if those bands were on top of the pops and they were giving like interviews on, you know, the biggest of television programs. Yes, MTV back in the day used to be all be about the music. Young people, believe me, it did. Until the late 90s, where it just completely morphed into this horrific station for talentless celebrities and pop culture only, and anything else left of field was marginalised. But yeah, this album, it's a little grittier in Utero, it's a little harder hitting, but there's still the pop melodies and the singles that everyone knows, such as Rape Me, but obviously that didn't get quite the critical acclaim it could have got due to the name of it. Heart-Shaped Box, everyone knows as well, Penny Royal Tea. But there's also the harder aggressive songs on this album, which I prefer, to be perfectly honest, like Tourette's, Radio Friendly Unit Shifter, and Milk It, which right at the start of that song, The Prodigy actually, I can't remember what song it is. Is it Voodoo People? I might be wrong though. But they sampled the start of Milk It. Remember that. Frances Farmer will have her revenge on Seattle, and also Serve the Servants. But every single album, I'm going to link to my favourite song on each album in the drop down menu, and for this album it's got to be Radio Friendly Unit Shifter. That song has quite an intriguing and ironic title. It is very forceful and just a really great track. But yes, on to number 49 now. An album that I've only been listening to and known about. Well, I've known about it for years, but I've only started to appreciate it in the last 6 months. Whereas with that Nirvana album, obviously everyone knows Smells Like Teen Spirit, but I got into Nirvana about 7 or 8 years ago. So that's quite a while ago now. But this album I only found 6 months ago. So that's interesting, how you find music at different times by different artists and bands, and then you branch off into other places, get into new stuff, finding out certain influences from these people who've made this great music. It's absolutely fantastic. But yes, number 49 is DJ Shadow and Endtroducing. This is a trip-hop, instrumental, hip-hop, electronic album with absolutely tons of sampling. But the sampling in this album is done so well that you forget it's being sampled, yet there are so many samples. And there are some people who say that the art of sampling is, you know, there's no talent to it and whatnot. But this is the album I would, you know, showcase to someone if they said that. You know, tracks on this album: Building Steam with a Grain of Salt. What else we got here? The Number Song, Changeling, which is absolutely amazing. Stem/Long Stem, and then my favourite track on the album, Midnight in a Perfect World. Just sounds so urban, so gritty, so nighttime, and kind of the 90s version of Burial, who is a kind of an electronic/dubstep musician. These days, he's been around now nearly a decade. I kind of like his music, but I don't like, you know, any of his music anywhere near as what's on this album. Endtroducing is an incredibly consistent album. Obviously there's a few skits in here with it being a hip-hop album of sorts, but they all fit. But the song I'm going to pick as my favourite is Midnight in a Perfect World. Just get lost in that track, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely immense. But yes, number 48 now. We're going back to 1992 in the midst of all the grunge movement. I guess some people could lazily call this grunge. I'm sure there is a little bit of grunge in there. But it's post-hardcore, alternative metal, if you will. I don't want to get caught up in genres too much, but this is abrasive, it's aggressive, it's angry, and the album cover sums it all up. Search it. It is Helmet and Meantime. I love Helmet. I love everything they've done, even the albums that get called out for not being consistent and hard-hitting, I still like, but this is the peak. The album after this, Betty, as well, and even Aftertaste are also really cool. Page Hamilton, the lead singer, he doesn't really sing, to be perfectly honest with you. He just screams out these hate-filled vocals, chugging guitars all over the place. But some of the solos are actually quite jazzy and very melodic, within the midst of this heaviness. But it's very consistent. It's only 35 minutes long. If you like heavy music, aggressive music, and you never heard Meantime by Helmet, I highly recommend you chill it out. I could easily listen to it right now, to be perfectly honest with you. The track I am picking as my favourite is Ironhead, which is just awesome. Great stuff, yeah. I'll link that in the drop-down menu. But we're going a year back now, ladies and gentlemen. What are we on? 47? Yes, album number 47 in my top 50 albums of the 1990s. And it is an album that would be in a lot of music lovers' top 10. But I don't love it so much, but it's still a great album. I'll give it that. It is Loveless by the Irish band My Bloody Valentine. Now, I'm not so much into shoegazing, dream pop, noise rock kind of music, but you cannot deny on repeated listens that this is a solid album. Male and female vocals intertwining wonderfully. The vocals are far back in the mix. You can't really understand a word they're saying. I usually don't like that. And for me personally, it just showcases what a great album it is, the fact that I do like it because of that. But it's just a heavily consistent album. I think it's quite a lengthy album. Some of these songs go on for above 5 minutes. It's only 48 minutes in length, but you've got 11 tracks here. Only Shallow, the classic song from the album, is amazing, I must admit. And I think, I'm not 100%, but I think it's To Hear Knows When, which has this astounding, I think it's violin something. I love my music, but I've never played a musical instrument in my life, so I'm not too clued in with instruments. But you've just got to listen to it. It's very repetitive, but there is genius in repetition, ladies and gentlemen. And these guys know that only too well. They did actually make a comeback with a self-titled album last year, MBV it was called. Pardon me. And it was pretty damn good, better than I thought it'd be. But this is a truly fantastic album, so yes, do give that a listen. But the last album of this video, the first video in my top 50 albums of the 1990s, is the second album from the Rochdale band, pretty local, close by to me, Autechre with Amber. And Autechre, after the third album, Try a Repeat, became much colder and robotic, not much melody, but the first three albums I absolutely adore. I can leave or take the music after that, although I actually do quite like the last two albums, Oversteps and XI, Oversteps especially. But this album is the best in my opinion, and you know, I go on Last.fm, I go on forums, I go on Sputnik Music, Rate Your Music, other such sites, and I see a lot of people like say that the early material isn't great. It's still very well received. It got great reviews when they came out, but I think people are a bit holier than thou. At the end of the day, this album is 75 minutes long, you know. There are quite a number of tracks which are over 7 minutes in length. There are some that are eerie, cold, abrasive, some that are really downright weird, to be honest. But you've also got a real warmth with some of these tracks, and a warmth that has never been seen from Autechre, at least since the Try Repeat days, if I'm pronouncing that right, I might not. But they've also released a lot of EPs during the time, and if you love electronic music and you've never listened to Autechre, or Autechre, I call them Autechre, then I highly recommend them. But this is my favourite album, and the track I'm going to pick as my favourite from this album, put it in the drop down box below, is Montreal. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, won't you join me for the next video? I got a wireless mouse for my birthday. I'm loving it, I must admit. No wires, no stress. Well, until it runs out of battery anyway. Yeah, albums 45, 44, 43, 42 and 41. Join me in the next video for that, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you, my top 50 albums of the 1990s.